Assalamualaikum. Hi class, welcome back. In this video we're going to talk about the hypothesis testing for the claim that involve population proportions. Okay, so what about the hypothesis testing that you can conduct if you are trying to test a claim that is concerning about a population proportion, pi. Okay, pi. So basically, of course, there's still the three possible tail tests. Okay, two tail test, right tail test, and also left tail test. And the test statistics formula for this hypothesis testing is z-test given by this formula. Okay, sample proportion minus the hypothesized proportion divided by this. Okay, so for hypothesis testing for population proportion, pi naught here. Pi naught is the hypothesized proportion. So previously, it was mu naught because the hypothesis was concerning about mean. That's why it's mu. So here is going to be pi lah, because this is about pi. Okay, so this is your two tail test, right tail test or left tail test. So that depends on the claim. Okay, which tail test depends on the claim. So your new learning point for this video would be this formula. Okay, the z-test formula for hypothesis testing for population proportion. And your hypothesized proportion, okay, which is the value that will be given in the question lah. So this value should be within 0 to 1. Okay, the hypothesized proportion should be within 0 to 1 only. So it cannot be a negative value, okay? So for example here, an attorney claims that at least 25% of all lawyers advertise their services. Okay, at least 25% advertise their services. A sample of 200 lawyers in a certain city showed that 63 had used some form of advertising, which means 63 out of these 200 lawyers used advertising. Okay. At alpha 0.05, is there enough evidence to support the attorney's claim? So for this question, the variable here is about the number of lawyers who advertise their services. That is the variable. And you're given a sample of 200 lawyers in which 63 of them advertised and 137 of them didn't advertise. So here you need to show whether is it enough evidence to support the attorney's claim. So what is the attorney's claim, class? Can you identify which one is the attorney's claim? Yup, it's this one up here. Okay, so let's analyze this claim. Alright, so dia kata at least 25% of the lawyers advertise their services. So in other words, the claim, so the success here, okay, so the success here is advertise. Okay, the claim is concerning about those who advertise. So in other words, the claim is actually saying that the population proportion of lawyers who advertises is at least 25%. Okay, so I'm going to use this understanding to rewrite my claim in a statistical notation, okay, using a statistical notation. So for population proportion of lawyers, I'm going to use pi, and for at least, I will use the mathematical expression of greater than or equal. So you can check this using the table given to you in slide note page 7. Okay, so that table will tell you what expression represent what word. Okay, so at least is greater than or equal, and the hypothesis parameter here is retrieved from this 25% lah. Okay, 25% is also equivalent to 0.25 proportion. So yes, okay class. So the claim, the statistical notation for your claim is pi greater than or equal to 0.25. Okay, so since we have defined the success as advertised, then we can denote, that is your hypothesized proportion. We can denote X as 63. So X here is the number of lawyers who advertise, and P here is the sample proportion of lawyers who advertise. So to calculate P, you use the formula X divided by N, and this is your sample proportion value of lawyers who advertisers. Okay, so now we can construct the first step, which is the hypothesis statement. Okay, so please recall, class, which one is this? Is this H null or is this H1? Yes, you're right. This is H null. Okay, so for this question, our claim is at H null. This is our claim, okay? At least 0.25. Okay, so step 2, we need to calculate the we need to calculate the test statistics value using the formula showed to you earlier. So basically, you just need to substitute your P, your hypothesized proportion, which is this one, 0.25, and then calculate everything carefully. You should get 2.1229. Okay, so why don't you pause this video and try to use this formula. Make sure that you can get this exact value. So remember, class, you always need to use 4 decimal places in all of your solutions, okay? So step 2 is done. Next, step 3 is to establish critical value and the rejection region. So now how to do that? You need to look at your first step. So this is a left tail test. Am I right? This is a left tail test. So therefore, you will have a left tail test rejection region, which means your rejection region will be on the left hand side and the right hand side is the acceptance region. Okay, so this is your rejection region, and the critical value that will separate the rejection and acceptance region here is the critical value that comes from the Z distribution table, because your step 2 is a Z test. Okay, so we can only compare Z test to a Z critical value. So you cannot use any other critical value for this question. It has to be from Z. Alright, so since it is a left tail test, which means it is a one tail test, your critical value is gonna be Z alpha nu. Sorry, there's no nu here. This is Z. It's a mistake. I'm making more and more mistakes in my video, right? Please excuse me for that. So your critical value should be Z alpha, and since this is a left tail test, your critical value will be negative. Okay, so yeah, if you have a left tail test hypothesis testing, your critical value will be negative, even though the value that you get from your book is a positive value. But when you want to write it in your step 3, it's gonna be negative. So if for this case, it's gonna be negative Z 0.05, which is negative 1.6449. So this is the value that separates the rejection and acceptance region. Okay, moving on to step 4, we need to make a decision, right? Step 4 is to make a decision whether to reject or not reject H null. Remember, class, step 4 is always about H null. It doesn't matter whether your claim is at H null or H1. That does not at all matter in this step 3. Step 4. In step 4, it's always about H null. Okay. Alright, so apa nama? Okay, so kita kena compare kan? We need to compare your test statistics value to the critical value. So here, 2.1229 is your test statistics value. So on this number line, of course, positive 2 is going to be on the right hand side of the negative 1. Okay, so positive 2.1229 might be somewhere here, which means it is in the acceptance region. So class, when your test statistic falls in the acceptance region, your decision is to don't reject H null. Or you can also say that we accept H null, but theoretically it's not about accepting, it's about rejecting or not rejecting H null. Okay, so for step 4, the decision here is going to be don't reject H null. Why? Because the test statistics is greater than the critical value. So for a left tail test, if it is greater than the critical value, it shows that your test statistic falls in the acceptance region. Therefore, you don't reject H null. Okay, boleh kan? So lepas tu, finally, step 5, conclusion. So we need to make a conclusion about the claim. Step 4 is about the H null. Step 5 is about the claim. So now the decision is to don't reject H null, which means H null is true. we don't reject H null. H null is true. So when we don't reject H null, what happened to H1? H1 needs to be rejected. So this is what happened to H null H1 after the decision is made. Okay, we don't reject H null and we reject H1. So since your claim is at H null and we don't reject H null, or in other words, we support H null, so that means your claim, okay, consequently your claim is also being supported. Get it? So in this case, we don't reject H null, which means we support H null. So since the claim is at H null, that means claim is being supported. So therefore, the conclusion here is at alpha 0.05, there is insufficient evidence to reject the claim. Okay, so we cannot reject the claim. Or in other words, you can also say that there is enough evidence to support the attorney's claim. Okay. So you can actually write one of these lah. You don't need to write both sentences. You can just say at alpha 0.05 there is enough evidence to support the attorney's claim. Done. So these are the 5 steps to conduct hypothesis testing for population proportion. Okay, the only difference from my previous video is that the claim involved proportion and this formula. So there's only one formula for population proportion, so you should never go wrong lah when you do this hypothesis testing. Okay, done. We're done for this video class. So practice on these exercises. Yes, and I'll see you in our next class. Bye.